morning from sunny California. I'm Arianna Carughi, member of NeoLife Scientific Advisory Board, and today it is a pleasure to talk to you about our brand new vitamin D product. Having the adequate amount of vitamin D in the body is essential for good health, and maintaining optimal levels of this vitamin, often called the sunshine vitamin, is particularly important nowadays, as I hope you will see by the end of my presentation. I'm so very excited about this new product that I just want to jump ahead and tell you all about it, but I have a very important story to share, a story that addresses precisely our current health concerns and challenges, and I think it is important to do that first. So I ask for a little patience. At NeoLife, we all are about high-quality nutrition, and we have been so for over 60 years. We always say quality nutrition is vital for optimal health, but what is key to you right now is that quality nutrition is also vital to support your immune system. There are 50 plus essential nutrients that your body needs to function. No one food or a supplement for that matter has them all. Vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, essential lipids, amino acids, proteins, they're all working synergistically to keep us healthy. But today, I want to pick out a nutrient that, while it's available in our diet to some extent, it is crucial to address our present-day health crisis, and that is vitamin D. As you will listen to this story, I would like you to remember it so that you can share it with your family and your community. Why vitamin D? Because this vitamin is a main contributor to the normal functioning of your immune system. What we need now is a strong defense. We need to protect ourselves against those microorganisms that cause infectious diseases, bacteria and viruses. And having a strong immune system is not only essential for you to fight them, but to have also milder infections if you do get infected, and to shorten the recovery time. I want you to focus now on that orange shield that has a D in it and ask yourself, how good is your defense against invading pathogens? How strong is your immune system? Your defenses depend on your immune system, and vitamin D plays a very important role in how well it performs. But I have some rather startling news for you on how we are doing in terms of our own body's vitamin D sufficiency. New research shows very clearly that around the world we have low vitamin D levels or vitamin D inadequacy. What does this mean? It means that if we sample blood levels of active vitamin D, it is below the level deemed optimal by health authorities. This has been done worldwide, and we find that up to 90% of the population in South America is suffering from vitamin D inadequacy. In Europe, 2/3 of the population has inadequate vitamin D levels, and in Africa, upwards of 60 to 78%, depending on the region and the season. Vitamin D levels fall drastically in winter, and those individuals who spend most of the time indoors have the lowest levels. Let us look a little bit more into this vitamin. Very early in the 1900s, scientists discovered that vitamin D was essential for keeping our bones healthy. Back 150 years ago, poor children in urban areas where smog blocked sunlight, who were often put to work in factories and spent long days indoors, had a disease where the bones developed soft and weak. It was called rickets. If you look at this vintage picture, you can see the two children on the left and the right have bow legs, either inwards or outwards. This is a result of rickets due to vitamin D deficiency. We need vitamin D to absorb calcium and phosphorus from foods and to regulate blood levels of these minerals so that they can be incorporated into bone. Bone is strong because it's built from hydroxyapatite, a mineral made of calcium and phosphorus. When there is vitamin D deficiency, there is less calcium to make this mineral. If you look at the infographic, you can see an enlargement of the bone from a person that has rickets, and you can see that there is much less calcification. Bowing of the legs is because the long bones, like the femur in the legs, are not strong enough to support the weight of the body, and so they bow. Children with rickets also suffer from many other consequences. Many children have enlarged heads because the plates of the skull do not mineralize properly, so they bulge out in different directions. They also get sick more often. As I mentioned before, vitamin D is crucial for immune function. We know now that vitamin's role in bone health is quite critical, but I don't want us to forget that there are other nutrients that work with calcium to support bone health. Calcium, magnesium, and phosphorus go hand in hand with vitamin D and are critical for making and keeping strong bones throughout our lives, from the last trimester of pregnancy throughout infancy, childhood, adulthood, to advanced age. You're probably asking what happens if you're vitamin deficiency as adults. This leads to a deficiency syndrome called osteomalacia. It is a condition very similar to rickets in children. As they do not get enough vitamin D, they can't absorb enough calcium to keep bones strong, and the legs also bow. You have heard me say now many times the word sunlight, and how vitamin D is called the sunshine vitamin. This is because your body can actually make vitamin D when the sun shines on your skin. How? Basically, the ultraviolet rays in the sun, specifically UVB, convert cholesterol in your skin into a precursor of the active form of vitamin D, pre-vitamin D. Pre-vitamin D is then modified in the liver to form calcidiol, another precursor of vitamin D, and finally travels to the kidneys, where the active form of vitamin D is produced, calcitriol. Today, more than a vitamin, vitamin D is considered a hormone. Like other steroid hormones made from cholesterol in the body, for example, the sex hormones and cortisol, it is activated in one organ, in this case the kidneys, and has effects in many other organs and systems in the body, like the intestines to allow for calcium absorption, the skeletal system where it makes bone, and as we will see, in many other organs and systems. Let us recap. Given sufficient exposure to sunlight, it's no problem to make vitamin D from cholesterol we have in our skin, given that you have a healthy liver and a healthy kidney. But what happens if there is no sunshine? We can get vitamin D from the foods we eat and from dietary supplements. However, because foods are naturally rich in vitamin D, it can be very difficult to meet daily requirements from food alone. We typically only get about 10 to 20% of our vitamin D from foods, so taking a supplement has always been a really good option to fill the gap. Diets and supplements provide two forms of vitamin D, vitamin D3 or cholecalciferol, and vitamin D2 or ergocalciferol. These are very efficiently utilized throughout the body as the active form of vitamin D. Other than its role in keeping our bones strong and healthy, what does vitamin D do? We know now that vitamin D works around the entire body. We used to think that vitamin D was just about bone health, but not anymore. In the past decades, and particularly the past handfuls of years, research has shown that cells from different organs have what we call vitamin D receptor, places in the cells where vitamin D docks in to exert its function. Scientists have found vitamin D receptors are everywhere in our body, in our skin, lungs, brain, heart, muscle, bone marrow, retina, and nervous system. They're literally found everywhere. What does vitamin D do there? We are just beginning to understand. It is estimated that vitamin D is involved in the regulation of 5% of all the proteins in the body. So it is necessary for all cell development and immune function. It is necessary for the integrity of the skin, the lining of our intestines, and our lungs. It regulates cardiovascular function, increases muscle strength, and influences our mood, regulates our nervous system, and it's also involved in controlling inflammation. In fact, in 2007, Time magazine cited the multiple benefits of vitamin D in our body in its list of top 10 medical breakthroughs. We started saying that there is no better offense than a strong defense. So let's take a deeper dive into vitamin D's role in our immune system and think about that shield that we saw earlier. We want the best defense possible, and it's not just wearing a mask, it's protecting our cells at various levels. Vitamin D is critical for what we call the first and the second line of immune defenses. Our first line of defense includes physical barriers that are always ready and prepared to defend the body from infection. For example, our skin and the lining of our lungs and intestines. It is like the mask that you wear in public. The second line of defense is a group of cells, tissues, and organs that work together to protect the body. Once a pathogen enters your body, or immune system cells, white blood cells, identify and seek out and destroy disease-causing organisms. Vitamin D plays an important role in both lines of defenses. It maintains the integrity of your skin, intestinal barrier, and the linings of the lungs. And vitamin D also stimulates the production of antimicrobial peptides, or small proteins called defensins. They are produced by the immune cells and the cells lining our gut and our lung airways. And these peptides kill invading microbes and stimulate the second line of immune defenses. Vitamin D is necessary to mount an effective immune response, necessary to protect us against virus and bacteria. So what about the role of vitamin D in respiratory tract infections? Recent research has shown that people with inadequate levels of vitamin D suffer from a higher risk of these infections, as well as complications and mortality. Looking at how effective vitamin D supplementation is, 3 large studies consistently show benefits for preventing respiratory tract infections, particularly in children and the elderly. Those individuals who are the most vitamin D deficiency have the greatest benefit. Vitamin D is the only nutrient with which studies have been conducting looking specifically at its relationship with COVID-19. Low levels of vitamin D in the blood are associated with higher risk of COVID-19. When a new research study at the University of Chicago Medical Center has found that when it comes to COVID-19, having vitamin D levels above those traditionally considered sufficient may lower the risk of infection. Another study published in JAMA Open Network on March 19 looked at the relationship between vitamin D levels and the likelihood of testing positive for COVID-19. Individuals with vitamin D deficiency had a higher chance of testing positive for the virus. A separate study recently found that more than 80% of patients diagnosed with COVID-19 were vitamin D deficiency. Going back to consider the global issue of vitamin D inadequacy, you're probably struggling with the thought right now. Am I low in vitamin D? Are my levels inadequate? I sure hope not. But actually, if we look at the statistics, chances are that you may well be. Levels below 30 nanomoles per liter are defined as deficient, and this may put an individual at risk of developing rickets in children or osteomalacia in adults, as individuals cannot absorb enough calcium to keep strong bones. At this level, there is also an increased risk of infectious diseases and other negative health outcomes. Between 30 to 50 nanomoles per liter levels are considered suboptimal for overall health, potentially impacting many of the body systems that we talked about when where you do have the vitamin D receptors. If vitamin D levels are above 50 nanomoles per liter, they are considered desirable and appropriate. So who's most at risk of vitamin D inadequacy? As we mentioned before, where you live can impact your status. The farther you live north or south of the equator, the less of sunlight exposure that you have, and so the greater the risk of vitamin D insufficiency. If you work long hours indoors, you may not be getting enough sunlight, and so you may be at risk of inadequacy again. If you have a darker skin tone, it might impact the amount of UVB rays that penetrate the skin, as darker skin has more melanin, which acts as a sunblock, a natural sunblock to UVB rays. If you are an older adult, you may be at a risk of insufficiency, as you're making about half as much vitamin D in the skin as when you were young. And also strict vegetarians or vegans are also at risk because there's little vitamin D in plant foods. It also turns out that people who are overweight or obese have an increased risk because vitamin D gets sequestered in the fatty tissue. And finally, when we do go out in the sun, we are urged to cover ourselves with sunblock to lower our risk of skin cancer. Also, dermatologists are always reminding us that we should be avoiding the sun to prevent photoaging of the skin. So here again, we are in a catch-22. Taking into account limited sun exposure, how much vitamin D should be in our diet? Based on the food-based dietary guidelines of South Africa, the adequate intake levels of vitamin D for adults and children over the age of 1 is set at 15 micrograms or 600 IUs daily. Older individuals, those 70 and above, require higher amounts, 20 micrograms or 800 IUs per day. However, current research suggests that optimal vitamin D status may be achieved with daily doses of up to 25 micrograms per day, which is about 1,000 IUs. How easy it is to meet these levels? Well, it is not easy at all. As I have been saying, very few foods contain vitamin D. Pretty much fatty fish like tuna, salmon, and mackerel are the standout sources. We would have to eat a big salmon fillet every day to get our daily requirement. Small amounts are also found in beef liver, in some cheeses, and egg yolks. Vitamin D fortified milk does contain vitamin D, and we would have to drink around 3 glasses of milk a day to get our daily requirement. Other than some mushrooms, plant foods have almost no vitamin D. So it can be very difficult to meet daily requirements from foods. As I mentioned before, we typically only get about 10 to 20% of our vitamin D from the diet, and as it is not widely distributed in foods. So it is not surprising all age groups are not meeting vitamin D needs through the diet. In fact, the situation is pretty dismal. Young kids are doing the best, with about a third of their dietary requirement being met through foods, but this drops down to 25% of their requirement among teenagers. Most adults are at under 25% of the requirement, and as we get older, many people fall off. Among 40 to 100% of elders fell far below the WHO standard for vitamin D adequacy. To summarize, as we approach the end of our vitamin D story, we have seen that we do not get enough sunlight exposure to make vitamin D in our body, and our intakes are low compared to the requirements. Very large segments of the population are at risk of vitamin D inadequacy or insufficiency. And as we have seen, vitamin D is vital for our defenses. It plays an important role in all our body systems and organs, not just our bones. Vitamin D can be considered a hormone as well as a vitamin, and as such, its impact on our health and well-being is staggering. For all these reasons, at NeoLife, we decided it was time to introduce a new breakthrough in vitamin D supplementation, Vegan D. Vegan D is a proprietary blend of 100% vegan, naturally sourced vitamin D2 and D3, ergocalciferol and cholecalciferol. Vegan D is a result of hard work by the Scientific Advisory Board, carefully evaluating the research and raw materials to provide you with a leading-edge vegan formula delivering both forms of the vitamin. As you know, the SAB is a group of scientists covering a wide range of specialties in health, nutrition, and food sciences. We are all committed to developing products that work, that are effective, that are safe, that bring only benefits. Our priority is filling your needs for optimal health, so Vegan D is perfectly timed given our current health crisis. Let us look at this product in more detail. Vegan D, as I mentioned before, is a proprietary blend of naturally sourced vitamin D ingredients. Vegan D is whole food based and made entirely without animal source ingredients of any kind. It fulfills the strict sourcing criteria expected by the vegetarian and vegan users. Vegan D provides both forms of vitamin D, vitamin D2 and vitamin D3. Both forms of this vitamin are proven effective and well absorbed. We chose to use both forms of vitamin D to provide our distributors or customers with the best unique product on the market and to show the NeoLife difference. Each tablet provides 10 micrograms of vitamin D2 and D3, which is equivalent to 400 international units. And this is equivalent to approximately 2 cups of fortified whole milk or a large fillet of cooked salmon. The recommended dose is 1 to 2 tablets per day. As always, NeoLife ensures its quality and safety. I know that you have a question now. Is it okay to take Vegan D with 10 micrograms per tablet of vitamin D, and if you're still taking CalMag? And the answer is yes. Yes, both using CalMag and Vegan D together would provide additional vitamin D to support health if higher levels are needed. The safe upper limit or tolerable upper intake level for vitamin D is 100 micrograms, that would be 4,000 IU for adults, including pregnant and breastfeeding women and the elderly, and children age 11 and above. So we are well within the safety level taking both supplements. What are the sources of vitamin D in Vegan D? They are from whole food vegan sources. We obtain cholecalciferol or vitamin D3 from a lichen, Cladina rangiferina, also called reindeer lichen, and vitamin D2 is obtained from yeast, baker's yeast, or Saccharomyces cerevisiae, and from mushrooms, Agaricus bisporus. You are probably wondering, what is a lichen? A lichen is a combination of an algae and a fungus that grow together in a mutualistic relationship. Lichens grow in different parts of the world, from sea level to alpine forests. They are very long-lived and with some considered to be among the oldest living things. Lichens are very hardy plant that can grow in different climates, humid or dry, cold or cold. Lichens, however, grow in relatively pristine environments because they do not tolerate air pollution. For a product, then we use reindeer lichen. You are probably going to ask me if lichen is part of the human food chain. And yes, the answer is yes. This particular type of lichen has been used as a traditional food in Arctic countries as a survival food during periods of famines. For example, it has been used in bread recipes, including boiled lichen and rye grain ground into a flour. Reindeer lichen has also been used in the diets of native Alaskans. For our vitamin D2 sources, we use the whole food power of mushrooms and nutritional yeasts. Mushrooms in general contain a very low level of intrinsic vitamin D2. However, if exposed to sunlight or UV light, the levels increase as the precursor of ergosterol is converted to ergocalciferol or vitamin D2. And this makes them one of the most concentrated vegan sources of the vitamin. In addition, mushrooms have lots of healthy components, phytonutrients, and other healthy carbohydrates. For example, it is rich in beta-glucans, which in themselves benefit our immune system. Mushrooms are also nutrient-rich with copper and selenium and supply phytonutrients like phenolic acids and polyphenols. Our form of D2 is extracted from nutritional yeast or baker's yeast. Yeast is known to have a high nutritional value, in particular as a good source of B vitamins. Brewer's yeast, for example, has been sold commercially as a human nutritional supplement for many, many years. So you're probably thinking now, who can take this product? Vegan D is for everyone, for children, teenagers, and beyond. It is for those of us who consume animal products and for those who do not, for grandparents, moms and dads, and grandkids, for everyone. As we finish this story, I hope you walk away with 3 main points. First, suboptimal vitamin D levels or vitamin D inadequacy is a worldwide issue. Second, inadequate levels lead to a compromised immune system, and insufficient levels may further compromise our ability to fight off respiratory tract infections. And third, vitamin D is not just about the health of our bones, it plays an important role throughout our body. So I hope I have shed some light or many rays of sunlight that will help you make a change and be in control of your health with Vegan D. Like all of NeoLife's products, it is based in nature and backed by science. This means that NeoLife always looked to whole foods for guidance in selecting raw materials. It also means that the products reflect the latest advancements in the area of health and nutrition. They are dietary supplements that you can feel good about providing for yourself, your family, and your NeoLife community. These products will help you maintain optimal levels of nutrients that are so important for the functioning of your body and help promote your well-being. They meet or exceed the quality, purity, potency, and consistency standards of all regulatory authorities around the world. As I always say, they are proven, effective, powerful products. Thank you very much for your attention.